a lot of international work, traveling uh, across the world with traveling exhibitions, but also working always with local partners. So many of the countries that I see are represented here. We have also projects from the Anne Frank House running in your countries. Um, so today the focus is in a project that I developed with support of the European Union, Erasmus Plus, together with partners from 7 countries, 9 different partners. And it's a large toolbox that deals with many aspects of discrimination. And well, because today is World Refugee Day, I thought it would be a particularly relevant moment to look at how we can be more inclusive in our education. Um, what do we need to do to make sure that all the students feel welcome in our classes, feel heard, and feel that the space is safe to share stories, to share opinions? So I'm going to take you through many slides because this will give you an indication of what the toolbox looks like. I want to move to the next slide now. I'm just seeing which way to do that. Um, Carol, can you? There we are. Yes. Um, Stories that move. The title was chosen because we want to move young people to feel empathy for others. We also want them to move in the sense of being open to other perspectives, to have their own opinions, but to realize that it's worth listening to someone else's opinion. And we want them to move to take action, to be active citizens who realize that they can help change the world for the better in many different ways. So I mentioned it's a large tool. It's really a toolbox with lots of choice for teachers and for students. Key words that we'll look at today is, what do we mean by inclusive education? What do we mean by creating a safe space? What is the particular relevance of refugee voices? And I'm curious if this would be new for you, but blended learning is an essential part of this toolbox. All the material that I will show you is online and it's freely available in 7 languages, but it's not an online course. We always want to make very clear to teachers that they can use the toolbox in many ways, but they are an essential element in the learning process, because learning online, that won't work when we're dealing with discrimination. We need students to talk to each other. So you will get an indication of how this blended learning works when I ask you a few questions. And in this case, we're not online in the toolbox, but we have some poll questions. And I'm going to very much ask you to all be very active in giving your answers when I show you the poll questions, because then you will understand how the toolbox also works. So today is, I'm just checking again, probably this one. PowerPoint's very slow. I want to go to the next sheet. Carol, can you do that for me?
Yes, sure.
My computer's not responding. Yes, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. For some reason, my computer's not in charge of the PowerPoint, but that's fine. I just wanted to reflect one moment on this important slogan that I found on the website of the UNHCR, which is to honor the strength and courage of the millions of refugees. I think too often in the newspapers, in the media in general, refugees are presented as victims and as a problem. And that's not doing justice to these people who leave their homes because they need to and have the courage to leave and to build a new life elsewhere. So I really like this slogan, and it fits also to the approach that we have in Stories That Move. Although the toolbox has as a central theme discrimination, we are also very much giving young people a voice to express themselves as the ordinary young people who they are. So if we go to the next slide. Yeah. What I noticed that having a quick look at the UNHCR is that they have a project, Step with Refugees. And I just wanted to, in honor of today, of the 20th of June, to stand still with this particular approach, which is taking the stories of young refugees who have moved a long distance to go to safety. And here it's connected to something that other young people can join. You can join this program and contribute your steps to this movement. Yeah. This is not itself Stories That Move, but I want to show how it's part of a bigger movement of activating young people to be active. So the next slide shows you Stories That Move itself, the homepage of the website. And I already mentioned that it's important you realize that it's a free tool. Anyone can go in there. If you want to use it, you go to the start, the orange button, and you make an account as a teacher. Later on this afternoon, I will show you how easy that is. If you look to the three little words, completely free, access to unique content, and a closed environment, this is part of the safe environment. As a teacher, you can make a digital classroom, which is where students can share their answers with each other, can work together, and as e-twinning teachers, you will know how important it is that it is also digitally safe. So that's, from a technical point of view, just some points. The next slide shows the partners that we've worked with. And for those of you who have joined more recently, I mentioned before the project languages of this tool are related to the partners we have. I won't mention them all, but we have partner organization in Germany and in Austria. So we have the German version. 3 organizations connected to this project in Ukraine, a Hungarian partner, Polish partner, and of course it's also available in Dutch. Yeah. So it's a large group, and maybe one thing to mention when we're talking about discrimination, we very often really don't agree. When is something racist? When is something anti-Semitic? When is something anti-LGBT? And also as a project with all these different countries joining in and experts from each country joining in, we often didn't agree. And I was responsible for the project and leading the international team. So there was a moment when I thought, oh dear, what now? And we actually made it part of the tool that you are dealing with a diversity of opinions. And we don't have to agree to be able to learn together. So just wanted to share that that was one of the results of having such a large international project, that many different opinions were feeding into the tool and helping us realize we really don't want to give students answers. We want to give them the opportunity to think. So on the next slide, you have a brief indication of the 5 main topics, the 5 modules. And it's too much to all go into. Today I will show you just one little element of seeing and being, which is about identity and diversity. How do young people see themselves? And how do other people see them? And how do these things relate to each other? This first module is not about discrimination. It's really about who am I? The second module, facing discrimination, is actually something we won't focus on today, although it's a very important part of the tool, but we can't do it all. In life stories, I want to give one short example from that today because it has also the stories of refugees integrated. This is about learning from the past for the present. Mastering the media, we also won't deal with today, obviously in relation to the topic of discrimination and prejudices. The media play a role, but today we will focus more on the taking action. So, on the next slide, you can see how the voices of young people are central to this project. We knew when we started as a team to make this tool that it would only work if we worked with the people it was meant for. So right from the start, we brought together a large group of young people as our experts. It was part of the research we did. And we have been interviewed by now 30 young people from across Europe, from many different backgrounds. And for each of the modules, each of the learning paths, you will find examples of stories. Today, we will look at 2 stories specifically from refugees who came to Europe. So what you see here, this slide is from the website. When you navigate the website, you will see all the videos can be found together under videos. The next page also indicates what this looks like. Yeah. So today we will look at Soraya. Actually, we won't actually look at the clip and we won't use this story, but she comes from Austria, originally from Afghanistan. And we will look at Vail, who comes from, now is living in Germany, but came from Syria. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner, you see also Matej from Slovakia, who's there speaking about his disability. And, well, the young people come from 8 different countries with, like I said, many different backgrounds. Okay, let's move on. I already mentioned central to the whole way of working is that we listen to young people and we let our students listen to other people, their peers, and we've already noticed there are about 2,500 teachers connected to the project, that this really speaks to their students, that they are listening to stories of people the same age. 2 other elements that I will touch on today are methodological, visible thinking, and blended learning. And both I will expand on later. Visible thinking and blended learning are both, I feel, methods that help you as a teacher be very inclusive to your students. They make it easy, make it necessary for all students to be part of the conversation. But it's best to illustrate this with elements of the tool rather than being theoretical. So if we go to the next picture, next slide, here you just have an indication of the whole week that we spent with these wonderful young people. Some of them we interviewed 5 years ago, and we re-interviewed 2 years ago, and they are still connected to the project. They are taking it to schools themselves. On the one hand, very, very inspiring for us, and on the other hand, also great, gratifying that they are so enthusiastic about being part of this project. So, on the next slide, you will see a choice of 10 young people out of the larger collection of people that are in the tool, each of them giving a short quote about who they are. Soraya says, "In a small town, people will look at you as being different because they don't know you." And she comes from a small town in Austria. I just wanted to show this slide because it's from the teaching materials and it indicates that we give young people a lot of choice. Which story interests you? Which face, which quote attracts your attention. And it's also part of how the tool works, giving young people choices to make the connections that are important for them. And this is where diversity and inclusion is important. It's not only having diversity in the stories that we present, it's also letting students make their own connections. So I always try and resist when teachers say it's faster for me to tell which each group of students, you work with this story and you work with that story. Yes, it's faster, but it's not inclusive because it doesn't let them make their own connection. And one thing I have learned from the project is how surprising other people's points of view are. I have a vast experience in education, but I am learning so much from being in intensive discussion with these different project partners from different countries, but also with all these young people. So let's look more in detail at Suraya. The next slide. I already mentioned she lives in Austria, and I would very much like to show you the film clip we have of her. But last time we tried that in a training, everything got stuck. So I'm just going to read to you a little bit of what she says in the clip. And whilst I'm telling her story, try and think of one word for an emotion that this story gives you. Because this will be the poll question I ask. I'm going to give you two stories, and then I'm going to ask you to think of two words connected to your own emotion as a teacher when you hear the story of Suraya and the story of Vail. I've been living in Austria for 16 years now. The reason I helped refugees at the train station in Vienna is because I've always wanted to help other people. And because I can identify with them, because I'm from Afghanistan. And I didn't get a lot of help at the time when I came to Austria. The first time I went to the train station, we brought clothes and tea. We had read online that this was what they needed. We were there and helped them. After that, they were looking for interpreters. And because I speak Farsi, I immediately agreed and I stayed to help as much as I could. At first, things were very well organized, but this slowly started to deteriorate because there were fewer volunteers. If you can take, you can also give. And that's why I helped. That's why I helped the refugees at the Westbahnhof in Vienna. So these were the words from Suraya, 19 years old, when she shared this story with us. I'm now going to move to the next person. So it's the next slide. So you can see Vail. And Suraya her video is in German. It's subtitled in English and all the other project language. Vail speaks Arabic. He's from Syria. And when he was interviewed, he was also 19. And he is a Palestinian who was born and raised in Syria and came to Germany to be reunited with his family about a year and a half before he gave the interview. And he speaks about his papers and his status. So I now share his words. My passport is my alter ego. It sets me apart from people, from other people. It's not a real passport because I'm not a Syrian national and I don't have a Palestinian passport either, although I'd like to have one. This is a travel document for Palestinian refugees in Syria. You can view this document as a representation of what I am, but it also turns me into somebody who's different from everybody else. Other people have a real passport. I want to become a doctor because I want to help people in war zones. I want to go to an area where they need people like me. One day I will go back to Syria. I want to work there and help with the reconstruction of Syria when the war ends. They will need doctors to help restore the country. So I see some people say it's emotional. Um, Try and see now, the question from the poll that will pop up now is think very personally about your own emotion, thinking of Suraya helping at the train station and thinking of Val talking about his passport, which is not a passport. Give, if you can, just a few minutes, well, few seconds thought, and I'd like to encourage all 125 of you to put in your words so that we can see all the different emotions that you have. Now, I'm not seeing the poll. Carol, can you show the poll?
Okay, I'm trying to. I think attendees are writing here in the chat.
It should be not so much in the chat, but in the poll slide, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
No.
No, not this one.
It should be possible to see all the different words that people are contributing. But I'm not sure if Asi is online to help.
I'm going to ask her.
Yeah. Can the participants see the other people's answers? No, no one can see it. Well, while we're waiting to see everyone's contribution, because last time we did this, it was really quite interesting, but also fun. Yes, there it is. I think. Choose two words. So no answers yet. Now you've had plenty of time to all think. So let me see 125 words related to Val, and think of words that express an emotion. And I'll explain later why. I have 6 answers. It should be exploding now with everyone. Interesting to see the word lucky boy, because the word boy is added. I think this must refer to Vile. Yes, I see the question from Vanda. The stories are online on the site I mentioned, and they are video. And they are subtitled in English, but also in German and Ukraine, etc., and all the language of the project. Some people are putting their answers in the chat rather than in the poll. Never mind. I'm looking at both. What I will point out is that most of your words are actually quite positive, but there are also the sadness and the loneliness. And I'll explain while some of you are still contributing why I asked this question. It's actually not the question we always ask the students, but we are asking students to have empathy for others, to listen to stories. And I've noticed, and we've discussed this with also the psychologists in our team, that sometimes teachers find it quite difficult to voice their emotions. I have asked this question in face-to-face teacher training and quite often have been given um, words that relate to the story, but are not really about the emotion that the teacher has. Um, I've lost the poll. I don't see the poll anymore, but maybe it's time to move on also. But to conclude about the reason for asking words about emotions is that it can also stop you to think that what one considers sad and others will not deny is sad, having to leave your country, it being such a mess at the train station in Vienna that she couldn't help as she wanted to. There's a sad element there. There's also the positive braveness, courage, um, and none of these emotions are right or wrong. We all have our own emotions when we listen to a story, but I think it's important to acknowledge the presence of these emotions and to take time to consider them. So please do go and listen to Soraya and Vail themselves later today or tomorrow, because me reading their stories is nothing like listening to them. And then you will see the other ones that are there. Yeah. Okay. If we go to the next slide, I'll explain to you how this exercise of looking at different words that people express individually is linked to one of the visible thinking routines. I mentioned visible thinking as a methodology. I'd be interested to see whether anyone actually has experience with this methodology. It was developed at Harvard University as part of a project called Project Zero. And our whole team discovered this methodology a few years ago and started working with it because it gives the students in schools kind of ownership of their learning. It really helps them realize that they are learning when they are talking to each other, when they are having fun, when they think they're just chatting to each other, but actually by using a certain routine, asking them, what did you first think and what did you later think? They realize something has happened. Now, one of the very simple routines that I'm sure you will recognize from your own practice is called Think, Pair, Share. When in the tool we ask a question like, what do you know about discrimination? It's one of the questions we open a lesson with. Every student individually gives an answer. They later get a chance to compare their answer with that of someone else in a safe one-to-one or couple, two people speaking together. And only then is there the wider sharing with the classroom. This will be illustrated later with one of the other poll questions that I'm going to ask you. But I just wanted to indicate that if you want to know more about visible thinking, also you can go to the website and find this methodology explained. So the next slide shows Vail on the right-hand side, pointing at, in this case, newspapers. This is from the module Mastering the Media. It's about the media, and we're not going to go into it, but I wanted to show you the picture, one of the 6 main pictures, because it indicates how the young people were involved in every aspect of the tool. They made the main pictures, had great fun together. Now we will move to taking action. And while we go to the next slide, in the background, possibly, you can see 4 young people. I'm not sure it's totally clear, but you will see it's clear in the toolbox. We always start with a very brief introduction. Taking action. Your everyday actions have an effect on the people and society around you. How do people act against discrimination? And what can you do? This is the, setting the tone, asking them questions. What can you do? Let's move to the next slide. Yeah. Most of the modules have 3 lessons. And here you can see the first lesson is the one that we will look at a little in detail. The first one is action and change, and it's actually quite philosophical. It helps students realize that action can lead to change, but you have to consider when you want to take action and when you don't want to take action. The second lesson is about your rights to take action, is about human rights, standing up for yourself. I imagine in many classes this might be quite a sensitive topic. Are students always allowed to stand up for themselves in school? I think you have to consider whether you are creating an environment where all these lessons can take place, or whether you have to choose what fits best to your school environment. And the third lesson here is really helping students prepare an action. Very good for a project day. If they have the time and the opportunity to really not only think about what they would like to do, but actually prepare to do something as a group or as a whole class or in small groups. What you see here is what the students see, and it shows the students also the structure of the materials. And now we will go to the content page of the first lesson, Action and Change. And you can see it consists of 4 steps. And I think we're going to miss the first 2 steps. We're going to go straight to the third step. But I just wanted to show you this is the way that students are presented online with each step that they are taking either individually or as a classroom. The next slide is, if you like, the core of the lesson. First, students have discussed what it is to act or to not act, and then they go into their own reasons why they might act or why they might not act. And they fill in their answers, and I'm going to ask you to do that in the poll. Give your own personal reason or the benefits that you see in relation to taking action, or give reasons against or obstacles in relation to taking action. Again, I'd love to see, we're now 135 people, so I'd love to see many different answers. And feel free, there is no right or wrong. Just think of any simple situation in which you might consider doing something. What would stop you? What would be an obstacle? And what would decide you to take action? Who will be the first to contribute?
I wanted to make sure if people could see the poll.
So far, I only see reasons for taking actions. Maybe lack of time is very realistic. Now, I can see some of you thinking really as teachers. So we have to teach our students to be helpful. But what about you as a person, not as a teacher? Just imagine you are a student yourself, and you are just yourself. You're not in the role of the teacher. What decides whether you speak out, stand up, go somewhere, don't go, decide not to say something? Okay, I see very different answers, which is exactly what I want to see, because this is also what you will see in the classroom. Also, for example, the answer I just saw, let me just, how do you know if you have the right information? Um, the fear of exclusion is also often used by, mentioned by young people. Mm. Self-confidence can be a reason for or for not taking action if you don't feel confident. How does your community respond to you taking action? Someone mentions the gender aspect. Okay, let's look at what it looks like in the tool, because we're now using the poll that eTwinning provides, but in the tool, what happens is, if we go to the next, straight to the next slide, the answers of all the students are collected in a tag cloud, and they can all see each other's answers, and the white one is the answer that they put in themselves. So here you see the answers that are about not taking action: fear, nervous, danger, no point, shy. If we go to the next slide, you see the answers that students gave um, in favor of taking action, which are very similar to many of your answers. Making a difference, my beliefs, making you feel good. And if you see the two little balances at the top of the page in blue, if you click on one picture, you get the ones against, and if you click on the other picture, you get the ones for taking action. And you can discuss this with the class, and everyone's answer is in there. So you can refresh the page with a little circle at the bottom in the right-hand corner, and all the different answers come up. And this makes it very democratic. It's not one student or the student that always speaks out first. All the students are able to contribute, and in fact they have to contribute, otherwise they can't move forward in the project. So this is also an aspect, this is also an example of blended learning. First they put in their own individual answers, and then they see everyone's answers together, and then your teacher, you as a moderator, as a teacher, you lead the discussion. You can ask questions like, what surprises you? Is there anything you'd like to know more about? What does it mean that someone wrote goody goody? What does it mean that someone wrote it makes you feel good? Is that cynical? Or is it just positive? Okay, this was an example from the learning path taking action. We have one more question from this learning path that I will show you, which rounds off the lesson. If we go to the next page.
Sorry, just one thing, Karen. Someone's asking if
Yeah.
students can access the site from their mobile phones or they need a computer.
No, they need a tablet or a computer. And with the mobile phone, it's just not optimal. Actually, this exercise probably would work with the mobile phone, but some of them don't. So mostly we advise that teachers, if they have the opportunity, go to the computer laboratory, or otherwise they use the beamer in the classroom. And I know that the situation in Europe, across Europe, is very different. But it has been made as a tool to work on tablets or laptops. And I will share the link on the last page. But very simply, it's there already. Wonderful. Yeah. So just to show you how we like to round off after a discussion, we want to give a positive input. Think about the world around you. Which action have you noticed or heard of that has changed something? We had long debates in the team, um, and I was one of the people who feels you cannot expect all young people to be very active. Either they are emotionally not yet in that phase of their life, or they don't feel safe, but you can encourage them all to think about what action means and how change can come about. Because if they're not in the right place as a 15 or 16-year-old to be in some way active, to speak up or to stand up for someone, there will be a moment later on. And at least we give them the occasion to think about it and to discuss it with each other. So if you look on the next page, it just helps you to understand that on the website, the lessons are explained. What are the aims? And there is a teacher's guide um, giving you all the texts and all the exercises and also advice. That's on this page of the website. You can go to the next slide and it shows you how the downloadable teacher's guide looks like. It's not a lot of text. We know all the teachers are very, very busy, but it's as practical as we could make it. Yeah. So just quickly for another 5 minutes, because I want to leave time for your questions. I want to show you the historical component. Here again, you see three young people running through time. And we move straight to the next slide. This module is called Life Stories. And it focuses on what the personal stories of individuals tell us about history. Let's explore the history of discrimination by looking at different stories. In some schools, in some classes, I've realized that it's a little safer to talk about the past than about the present. So this is also one reason why language teachers are using life stories rather than the stories that focus on the contemporary situation. One more example of a poll question or of a question we ask students. I think we will skip it now for you, but I had prepared, write down 3 words about how discrimination affects people's lives. I think we don't want to take the time for you to all do this. But you would notice again, if you fill in these words, that all the words of all the students are collected. And in this case, they don't go to a tag cloud. At the end of the lesson, they get the same question. And then they have studied someone's life and they can add new words. So it's a moment of reflecting, what did I write at the beginning and what do I add now? So we can skip the next slide and go straight to the next one. Yeah, this lesson, Different Voices, the life stories, is actually, it's a long lesson. You can see it has 10 steps and you need, I would say, 150 minutes, 3 lessons, because it also has, if you look at number 9, it has showtime. They perform. They tell each other about a person whose history they have learned. And because of the theme World Refugee Day, I've chosen one story to show you, which is on the next slide. Sophie, who is in the middle, and the title of her story is Fleeing from Danger. She's one of the refugees from the period of the Second World War who is in this collection of 10 stories. Throughout the tool, we usually offer a maximum of 10 examples. We want to give students choice, but it has to be workable. So sometimes people want to add more stories, and I say, well, then we have to take one down. We have to be practical in what we want to achieve with the students. We can't throw 15, 20 stories at them and expect them to think seriously which one interests me most. So here, I mean, you see the diversity. Selahattin, he is a Turkish consul in Rhodes who helped save the Jews who were going to be deported from Rhodes. Simone Weil is a French survivor of Auschwitz. Sophie is an Austrian person. Stefan is a Polish young man. And Stephen is from the UK. I won't go into the details, but if we go to the next picture, you will see how one of the visible thinking techniques called See, Think, Wonder is applied in this part of the tool. Let me check. Yes, on the top right-hand corner, you see a little eye. And this is to help students realize they are going to be given different questions. If you go to the next page, there are 3 questions. They look at the picture and we ask them, what do you see? What do you think? And what questions do you have? And this helps them realize that often what you see is actually what you think you see. You don't actually really see it. And people mix these three things up. So this exercise helps them to look carefully. And I'd also prepared the next slide for you to also look carefully and discover what it is you see in this picture. But I think we're going to have to move forward. Usually when I do with the students, some will see, if you can go back, Carol? I won't ask you to fill in answers, but what students fill in is they see a camp, or they see a wooden building, or some people say, I see a bridge. Some people see soldiers, some people see trees, see winter. Very, very different what they focus on. And some see something that others really don't see, like a camp. Others really don't see a bridge. And in fact, it is a bridge. And it's the bridge that connects the story of Sophia. It's the place where she escaped from Austria as a Jewish young woman to Switzerland during the war, or just before the war, actually. But what we have done is we've chosen a picture or an object connected to the person which they discover, and it makes them curious. So let's move on and skip the poll. I was too ambitious with all these questions, just to show you that students were given 10 stories to choose from. After they've made their choice and they've done some group work, as a group they research a story. And in this case, the story of Sophie connects also to the man in the right bottom hand corner, Paul Guringer. And he was the guard at that bridge who secretly let 300 Jewish refugees escape to Switzerland, even though officially the border was closed. And he was dismissed when it was found out, and it was a very sad story for him. Now, of course, he is honored for being someone who was prepared to help refugees. The other stories are dealing with other histories, but they all have a connection to the theme of discrimination. And although a lot of the story is sad, we've also always chosen stories that have a positive aspect, like someone who's prepared to help, someone who's prepared to stand up. Um, yeah, this in very short gives you an indication of the tool and how we've wanted to include the voices of refugees. It's not specifically for refugees. It's not specifically about refugees. It's actually for all young people, and it's about all young people. But it wants to show how diversity is part of all of our societies, always has been, in fact, and how we need to be in contact with each other, talking about all the different points of view, understanding we have. So just two more slides to show you something very practical of the tool before I see what questions you have. At the end of the lesson, students always get to see this slide, and they can download their own answers just to keep or to give to you as the teacher, or they can go to the website to look up more stories. And on the next slide, you will see if you want to log in, everyone can make an educator account, teachers or other people in the educational field, and that helps you make a digital classroom. And the students can only make an account if you give them the unique PIN code. So the next slide shows you. If you're new, you create an account. If you're already logged in, you have an account. So please try it out. If you do have any problems, contact us, because our email address is on the website. And on this last slide that I show you now, the website storiesthatmove.org, it's rather large. You need to explore it. I wanted to point out that for anyone who has the opportunity, there is a 2-day training, and this is in English in Amsterdam. There are also trainings across Europe in different countries. And like I said, if you have any questions, if you want to be in touch with one of the people who helped develop the tool, write to us at info@storiesthatmove. So I'd love to hear any questions you have. Maybe there have been some posted that I didn't see while presenting.
Don't worry, nothing so far. We had a couple of them. One was answered by me already, and another one I make you answer. So maybe some of the attendees want to make any question now.
Maybe I can also ask if someone is typing, but do some of you work with refugees as your main audience, or I mean, it's very different to speak with students when there are refugees in the classroom or when they have never met a refugee. In the Netherlands, we notice this is very different. In the bigger cities and in some regions, refugees are more or less integrated, and in other regions, they are very absent. Yes, maybe an Arabic language version one day. I think, to be honest, that Spanish is first on the list, but yeah. And Misa, where is your school? Yeah.
Maria,
The diversity in the classroom is something we hear from the students that they like the fact that these young people come from all over Europe. Mhm. Yeah.
Maria says diversity in the class makes learning more interesting. We have some other comments from Laila. She thinks the most important thing while dealing with refugees is to treat them with humanity.
Mhm. Yeah, I see someone also mentioning that it's very difficult to deal with the prejudices in the
Prejudices,
classroom.
yeah. Mm.
Yeah, and I think it's a challenge we obviously must not walk away from. I think it's always it's also integrated in the tool, um, how to ask students why we have prejudices, where they come from, what we can do about it, and to acknowledge. I think it often helps students to agree to think more about it if teachers say, I have prejudices. Um, but it does very much depend on the context.
Yeah. We have some questions. Do you recommend it for elementary school kids? From
Well,
Kirsten?
a while ago I would have said no, but now some of my colleagues have started using some of the clips with 11, 12-year olds. It was developed for 14 years and older. Um, but I think teachers really know best what works for their students. And although if you take the English language version, the language is quite simple and students can answer in their own language. There's no limitation to which language they use when they type the answers. So it can be adopted to 11, 12, 13-year olds. But all the examples are young people from 14 years and older.
Okay. One more
Yeah.
question here from Emina. Do you involve the parents of the students as well?
Ah, thank you for the question. Um, well, we don't involve the parents, but recently at a school, students gave a workshop for parents. And there's a blog on the homepage of Stories That Move, which is about peer education, and it refers to this activity by students. They invited parents to come and learn from them why it's so important that these topics are addressed at school. Um, and because, of course, the tool is freely available for anyone, schools could encourage parents to look at the website, but we haven't actually done this ourselves. We still have quite a challenge reaching teachers, we find.
I see some comments. I don't see any other questions so far.
Yeah, I can see the emergency in Italy.
Yeah.
And I agree that, I mean, the Anne Frank House is really putting a lot of our time and effort into training teachers to help them. It's not it's not easy to be in a classroom full of students with very different backgrounds who don't agree with each other. Um, it's very rewarding when you have a group of students who will discover that it's actually nice to talk to each other. But in some cities, also in the Netherlands, classrooms are very segregated, and it's good to read that teachers are helping each other, of course. Yeah. Yes, and from Romania, I read the comments about attacks. We need to discuss with our students why people feel so violently so that they can start considering how to respond to people in their own environment who hate the other. Yeah.
Well, I think we as a teachers, um, we tend to educate our students about this, to be more uh, empathetic with them. But then sometimes parents are just the opposite. So it's quite difficult sometimes to educate students while you have families who really encourage these prejudices, right? So
Yeah.
someone was saying that it is important to educate parents, but uh, I don't think that's an easy thing. How do you think it could be done?
Well, I think realistically that we as teachers can't take on the whole world. I think even today a colleague of mine was saying how a young 8-year-old student in a primary school said, "Here at school, we're not allowed to discriminate against girls with a headscarf. My parents say I can, but I don't agree with them." So if you can set the norm at school, even those kids who are being pressured by their parents to think along with them will at least see that there are different opinions. But yeah, it would be wonderful to be able to reach out to parents, but I think most teachers would say too ambitious.
Yeah, actually, in here in our schools, what we try to do is to give some speeches to parents. Sometimes we bring police, sometimes we bring like NGOs, and it works for some families. But actually, since it's not mandatory, not everybody's coming. And actually, all of those who are coming, most of them are parents that already do things right. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit like, okay, we try, but we're not so lucky.
I think it's important to also give students who have a background that is full of worry and possibly hate, also the sense that it's that they are welcome in the school and that you understand it must be difficult for them to realize that at school there's one message and at home there's another.
Yeah,
You don't want to force students to choose between the teacher and the parents, but you do want to set a norm. So yeah,
sure.
yeah.
To protect the law of refugees belongs only to the governments, or do we belong to the individuals that cause the information of government? Uh, I don't know if I really understand what I could is asking. Probably if it's only the governments who are in charge of protecting or in creating these laws about how to integrate refugees or how to uh, uh, I don't really got it.
I think I would say that here we need to let young people know that there are laws that that forbid discrimination and that should protect refugees, but that we also have our own responsibility. Governments can't, well, for one, they can't control everything, and sometimes they're not actually wanting to be supportive. Yeah,
Hmm. Do you think politicians are a part of the increased hostility against refugees?
sorry, do I think if?
Miesa is asking, do you think if
Yeah.
politicians are a part of this growing hostility against refugees?
Certainly, many in all our countries. I think there are politicians who are creating a very negative climate. Yes, and I also think that maybe they are being given too much attention. It would be good if young people would hear more about positive projects taking place. But we can't deny the reality that there is a lot of people campaigning against anyone who's different.
Yeah. What can be the solution, in your opinion? Shiva is asking. What do you think the solution might be?
I think as a teacher, what the most important thing is to create this safe way, this space with your students, to find the time, difficult, but to find the time to talk with them, with all of them. Also those who are not really open to expressing their opinions because they might feel that their opinions are not respected by the teacher. You will find on Stories That Move a very wonderful video clip by Lutz van Dijk, an experienced educator, who shows how important it is we um, listen to young people with opinions that are problematic and express respect for them as people, not for their opinions, obviously, but to make them feel that they are accepted as a young person who's there expressing his opinion, to then be able to start a conversation. Now it seems the world is so divided between people who think so differently they're not talking to each other. On the other hand, I also think that the very first obligation of a teacher is to take into protection the students who are vulnerable in the classroom. Yeah.
Are there any more questions?
Mm. So maybe it is time to round off. Um, yes, I like the message from Tuba. To be constructive is our main task. And yeah, I hope that I've been able to give you some, some practical suggestions that are useful for your work. Um, and yeah, like I said, please be in contact and let us know if you have questions or ideas that we should, um, yeah, take into consideration. So, Carol, is it time now to round off?
Yeah, we shall wrap up. I think it's time now. Thank you so very much, Karen. It has been really interesting and very meaningful for all the attendees. It was really nice to see over 140
Yeah,
attendees, and
yeah.
all of them all the time making questions, and yeah, very responsive. That's really nice. We thank you all for being here. I remember also that if you want to join the e-twinning group for how to integrate migrant students at school, I'm sharing for you the link here. If you are interested, we also have a Facebook page where you can also join the discussions and the activities. I also share it with you. And I think it's your time now, Karen, to say goodbye.
Yes, thank you all very much for joining us. And yeah, it's been wonderful to be in contact with people from so many different countries. And I don't know whether some of you will have the chance, but I'll be at the eTwinning conference in October, so maybe then we would also have the chance to speak face to face.
Amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I will
Okay.
download the recording and upload it to the web pages. Okay. So
Okay.
you can also have
Okay.
it.
Goodbye then. Thank you. Bye
Bye.
bye.